Welcome on behalf of Convivium Cohousing for Seniors. Bienvenue à tout le monde. Who are we? Well, I'm not going to go into it at length because that's not the point of the session. But we are a group of local citizens working together on developing a supportive community for older adults and seniors in the Ottawa core area. There are other groups developing seniors co-housing in other areas of Ottawa and surrounding communities, and they'll be identified a little bit later on. Okay, so we're not the only thing, but we're the best. No. So what's the title of this event? It's Seniors Co-Housing, not surprisingly, but a new way to thrive in community, and that's what we're interested in. That's what we're focusing on. Specifically tonight, we're going to talk not so much about convivium, co-housing, but about a recently completed co-housing project, Harborside Co-Housing in Souk, British Columbia. Our presenter, as you saw from the notices, is Margaret Critchlow, and we will welcome her a little bit more carefully later on. Welcome also to a number of the groups that have, other co-housing groups and housing groups that have come from, in some cases, from afar. And again, you'll get a chance to be identified a little bit later on. The agenda that we've got is really a presentation by Margaret, about 30 minutes. And she's asked that we hold the questions until afterwards, and there'll be lots of time for questions. We need to be finished by about 8:30 or so. And I was warned that if the doors outside close at 9, so if you want to spend the night, you're welcome, but do it by choice. I should at least inform you that this session is being filmed, so if anybody's uncomfortable with that, tough. The point of that is that we want to share this presentation with others of our members who aren't here in terms of convivium, but also with other co-housing groups. And Margaret will also make use of it in her efforts. Now time to talk about Margaret. She's a retired professor of anthropology and taught at York. Her definition of retirement is interesting. She's a director of the Canadian Senior Co-Housing Society. She is also one of the founding members of Harborside. And as she is here tonight, she also gives lectures in other places on the concept of co-housing, its evolution, and her work in developing the co-housing community, if you will, in Canada. 25 of us benefited from her experience and in particular her facilitation expertise, which enabled us to grapple with some fairly tough issues in a fairly sensible fashion. And we even moderated our language. So I'm going to hand this over to Margaret, and I'm going to sit and listen. Thanks for coming. Margaret.
Thank you very much, Del. I don't have to talk to that. I can just talk. This is great. Thank you very much, Del, for that generous introduction, and thanks to you all for coming out on a very dirty night. I feel like I brought the BC weather with me, and my apologies for that. It's easy to get fearful when we see headlines like this, which was in Maclean's magazine a few years ago. When we look at the options that are available to our parents, I found it very concerning personally, because I realized that I didn't want the options that were available for my mother when I found a care home for her, and that by the time I got ready for the home, because we're never ready, right, that I wouldn't be able to afford it. So the dilemma that Maclean's identified was that baby boomers have had fewer children. So if you become a burden to your children, there are few of the children to share that burden with you. and that there's less healthcare available, or that the healthcare system is stressed by the number of baby boomers, and there are anxieties about whether it will be sufficient for us. So we live 25 years longer than people did in 1900, and so what's going to become of us? The needs of a diverse population, according to Charles Durrett, who's in the middle of this picture, are better served by co-housing than by traditional single-family homes. And this was an option that I turned to in 2011 when I went with my colleague Andrew Moore, who's the president of the Canadian Senior Co-Housing Society, to train with Durrett in Nevada City, which is Charles Durrett's home community in Nevada City, California. We formed the Canadian Senior Co-Housing Society explicitly to do things like this, to raise awareness about co-housing as an alternative, particularly for members of our generation. That said, I think it is a fantastic alternative housing form for young families and everybody in between. And you can mix them all in together. So as we trained, we became aware that we could come up with a solution back home in Souk, BC, that would work better for us than any of the institutional solutions that were around and would cost us a whole lot less money. And that we're in the process serving better than traditional single-family homes because of the land use model that co-housing endorses, which is density. So most of our members were living down long driveways in rural areas of Souk. And when we came together, we occupied 2 acres with 31 households, right? So freeing up land for farmland and that sort of thing, it's all part of the same parcel. And this is what we came up with. Andrew and I came back, we began offering workshops like the one that I offered for Convivium this weekend, but we were offering them to people who had just barely heard of co-housing, and I hope there are a few people in the room for whom this is the introduction to co-housing. So there were a lot of people like that back in 2011, 12, and 13. We offered the course. We not only offered it, we began to require it for anyone who wanted to join the group that came together that was committed to senior co-housing. That eventually became known as Harborside. We purchased a resort building. It was a small, one building, fairly small resort that became our common house and was quite well suited to it. That's shown in this picture. It's a lovely building. And it became an attractor or magnet for the coalescing the group. From there, and we, eventually we grew to 31 households. By January 2013, we were 8. We started out, and this I think may be important to those of you who are going through the process, we started out with a small group. It grew through that course and other events and potlucks to be about 30 people. We started looking for land. We couldn't agree on the site. We picked a particular site, that one in the picture, and at least half the people left. They thought it was too expensive. They thought buying waterfront was insane, and they weren't ready to put their money in. I mean, there were lots of reasons, but that was the nexus, the gist of it. So we were 8 when we finally got down to putting cash on the barrelhead, and and then we partnered with professionals, and some of those professionals are shown in the picture of our groundbreaking at September 2014. We partnered with professionals quite early on. It was to find the site in 2012, and then committed to complete project management with Co-Housing Development Consulting in January 2013. You can see that it is a lovely site. We have our own wharf. The very large boat mercifully has gone, but we have a place for members to moor their sailboats and launch their kayaks and so on. So to back up, what is co-housing? It's a neighborhood design that combine. I should ask the people who took the course this weekend, because that was one of the test questions was, could you, in an elevator, could you explain what co-housing is? Because it's often something people stumble through, but it's a neighborhood design that combines the autonomy of private homes with the advantages of shared common amenities. The compact homes are small, they're compact, and the common amenities are as large as the group can afford and as large as they need. It developed, the idea of co-housing developed about 50, probably it's closer to 60 years ago now in Denmark. And that's, from there it came to North America, brought by Charles Durrett, who was in the earlier picture, and his partner Catherine McCammett. And they wrote a book about co-housing, and they've written several books about co-housing. And they appeared on media in the US and popularized it that way. The slide is of Roberts Creek Co-housing in Seashelt on the Sunshine Coast north of Vancouver. It's a rare co-housing in that it has private homes, detached homes. We really wanted to do this at Harborside. We had little building blocks. We sat with the patient architect and we tried to arrange 24 building blocks on the 2 acres, and it just wasn't working very well. And most people didn't have a view of the ocean when we were done, right? So then we stacked them up, we combined them. We ended up doing quite a different site plan. But Roberts Creek was able to do this. It's a fairly small community. Co-housing can have all sorts of different building forms. It can be apartment style, townhouse style, duplex, single family, you name it. We are a combination of those. And co-housing exists all across Canada, but with a big gap between Saskatchewan and Ottawa. And in BC, they're sort of stacked on top of each other in this slide, which is the Canadian Cohousing Network, cohousing.ca, which is a great source of information. It lists all the forming communities as well as the completed ones. There are 9 completed cohousing communities in BC. 6 were developed by Cohousing Development Consulting. And then there are 4 more cohousing communities in the whole rest of Canada. And I believe it's having the expertise in project development and the proximity to the other co-housings in the states, which come up, California, Oregon, Washington, that Cascadia network. I think that accounts for why there's so many in BC. There is a co-housing, as you probably know, Terra Firma. Is anyone here from Terra Firma tonight? Great, good. There are many forming that we will introduce at the end of the talk. There's also Prairie Sky in Calgary and Go Habitat Quebec, which is in Quebec City. Co-housing is based on these principles. You can read them for yourself. I'm not a fan of reading PowerPoint slides. I believe you're mostly literate. Probably all literate, and if anyone can't see it, their neighbor can read it to them. But these are all very important principles. They are principles that can be adapted to wherever you live, and my colleague Andrew Moore is working on introducing co-housing principles into conventional rental and home ownership models. But what's often missing is the extensive common facilities, because those are expensive to build, and conventional developers, there's no reason for them to do that. So the value on community and privacy runs all through co-housing. People often ask me, well, I really value my privacy. I'm not sure I can live in co-housing. What do you think? And my answer is that in co-housing, you have as much privacy as you want and as much community as you want. It's up to you. You have that choice. You shut your door, it's private. People don't bang on my door. And whenever I open my door and go out especially to take my rubbish out, I always meet somebody and can have a conversation. I think that's got it. We'll talk more about sustainability and resident management later on. The Danes also came up with the idea of second half of life housing, or senior, what the Durretts have labeled senior co-housing. For them, it arose for people already living in co-housing who wanted more accessible homes. The initial homes were often built with interior stairs, and who also wanted a more what can I say, quieter dining opportunities, let's put it that way. Yeah. It developed in the early 90s and was brought over to the North American market with the publication of Durette's book called The Senior Cohousing Handbook. And believe me, when we found that in Souk, we thought we could do it. It really lays it out step by step. We soon learned that we would be fools to try to do it without professionals, but you certainly can see what you have to do. It's a very good book called The Senior Cohousing Handbook. At Harborside, this was the way that we created, this is what we created. I'll tell you more about how we created it later. This is a boardwalk that's run by the municipality, and the big green sailboat at the back is where Harborside Stock is. So we required this course on aging well in community. I now teach a new one on Is Cohousing for You, which is required for the 2 new groups that I'm working with out west. I offered a combination, custom made, kind of turned into a business meeting, but not really, for convivium this weekend. In order not to be a bunch of 90-year-olds, we really encouraged an active lifestyle. We wanted people who could manage to go up and down our hill, which is no mean feat, and who were willing to pay for having a waterfront location with a dock. We encouraged connection with the larger community. It worked well because about half of our members came from away from, not far away necessarily, but not from the little town that we live in. And so having half of us there to introduce newcomers and connect them with volunteer opportunities made it so much easier than just deciding that you're going to downsize and moving to a new condo and knowing nobody. Right? And not only do you not know your neighbors, you don't know, where's the library or how to get involved with Meals on Wheels or whatever it is that you want to do. Or the sailing club or any of that stuff. So we did encourage that connection. We developed and are still developing a program that we call co-care or community care, which is mutual support for each other. And we believe that we can live independently longer if we practice co-care. And then we have a care suite in the common house, the resort building, which allows potentially for a caregiver to live there. And it also holds the possibility for us of bringing in some sort of centralized home care. The kinds of people that live in our cohousing and in your cohousing come from a wide variety of backgrounds. You have to have the financial ability to purchase a home in the community. The way that cohousing is structured at present, there are no subsidies. There is a limited amount of funding available through CMHC, but basically the group that founds it needs to be able to be the homeowner group and needs to be able to afford to purchase a home there. But all sorts of ages and beliefs, and we talked about the range of beliefs that we have in our cohousing community. It's right across the spectrum, right? There are a lot of independent people, a lot of leaders in cohousing. I imagine that you're not surprised to hear that. And it provides a way for people to cooperate and for leaders to share the leadership. There's a wonderful image that we used over the weekend for one of the small groups of geese flying, and how geese rotate leadership. Well, that's what needs to happen in cohousing. And you need to be able to get in somebody's slipstream once in a while and just fly along, right? Yeah, I sometimes say I just want to honk from the rear, right? Yeah. So we're quite a diverse age range, and we welcome children. It's my daughter and her niece when she got married out in Souk in 2008 in that same house that we bought. So there are two senior cohousing communities in Canada. There's ours, and the first one was Wolf Willow in Saskatoon. Neither has an age restriction. So we decided not to do that for a variety of reasons, and we have a focus on aging well. But anybody of any age can live there. And we wanted to do that so that we could raise grandchildren if we needed to, so that people could have their heirs inherit If they weren't 55 plus, could they inherit and live there? And the answer is yes. And it's our hope is that this way we can keep a multi-generational community going. We started, when we moved into Harborside, we had 3 generations. And that was wonderful. That's exactly where we wanted to be. And we'd like to continue to have that mix of ages. We had more than a 40-year age spread. So this is the slide that tells it all. We could spend the whole evening on it, and I really don't want to do that. But it does give you an overview of what's required in our model of creating co-housing. Now, you will have your own models, and I can only speak from the experience that we had at Harborside, and that I continue to have by working with Co-Housing Development Consulting to create new co-housing communities in BC. And that model is that you need to raise at least 25% of the project value equity. That is the whole cost of the project. Ours was $12 million. And we needed to raise 25% of that in order to get a construction loan. This is not peculiar to co-housing. Developers know this, that in order to get a construction loan, they need to get 25% of project equity. That's just what the financial institutions require. So how did we do that? First, we when we were ready to buy the land, which we were able to buy from a friendly landowner who wanted to become part of the group, which was great. So he was willing to take back financing. But we still needed 25 to 30% of the project equity by the time we started construction. So we formed a company, and the directors of the company were 1 share per household. That didn't mean, it meant that you could have you could vote half a share, you could be a full participating member, but it was 1 share per household. Some households had 2, a few had 3 members of the household, but they all shared a share. And they were required to put in an initial shareholder loan of $20,000. That was their commitment to buy a unit. It became credited to that unit, but we didn't know which unit it would be, because this was like dreamland at that point, right? But it was credited to that unit, and then at construction start, we knew what units we had, and we had a priority list determined by the order in which people joined. So at construction start, the directors were invited to, in fact required, to top up to 10% of the purchase price of their home. It was a 10% down payment, basically, right? And that was their, so the thing is that you can see that gets you to 10% of the 25% that you need. And the balance came from additional loans that members of the group put in, and they earned a return on their investment. They got a benefit on their investment of a discount on the final price of their home. And as people got, when we knew we were starting construction, people were beginning to sell their homes, or they would free up cash and they would invest. And we ended up drawing down, we got a $7 million construction loan, and we drew down 3 of it. And the rest of it came from the members, along with the balance of the 12 million. Because we had the experts involved who were keeping the financial records in such a way that everybody could see where the money was going. We all agreed on what we were spending the money on and when we would spend it. We all agreed on any changes during the construction period and so on. We did build our project on a fixed price construction contract. So that's sort of that is how we did it. And then it was converted to the purchase price of the home at completion. In our model, future co-housing residents participated in all of the stages, like all of the design. We had 6 design workshops. And we worked very closely with the architect to achieve a design that met the needs of our membership. So that worked very well because we had the membership we had about 2/3 of it really early on, and the input from those people shaped the designs for the site plan and the units, and people got what they wanted more or less, right? And they had optional upgrades that they could use to get more of what they wanted, when other people didn't want it or didn't want to pay for it. And we did this with support from a really good architect and a really good project manager, pictured here. That's Renee Matthew from Burnaby, Cohousing Development Consulting, and Peter Troyheit. I know a lot of architects, and even my son-in-law is an architect, so I can't say the nicest architect in the world, but Peter's right up there. Yeah. Yeah, they served us really well. So we selected, and I can't overemphasize the importance of having professionals. It was really important for us not to employ members of the group. That was a decision we made early on. And we did have an architect in our group. Andrew Moore was an architect. But we hired Peter, and we hired Renee, and through them we hired, it must have been 10 or 11 other professionals, engineers of all sorts especially. And that was expensive and totally worth it. It helped to keep the project on budget in the end. And the civil engineer alone saved us $250,000. So we selected this site. There's the ocean, there's the street, there's the ocean, there's the street, because it fit the official community plan that we were working with in our town. It was where they wanted density. It was what the town planners wanted to see. We went for the easy stuff, right? Because we wanted it to be completed in our lifetimes. We picked the site because people really wanted all to have a water view, and none of us could have afforded waterfront ourselves, but we were able to do it with the power of 31 households. And as you can see from the slice there, it's quite steep. So everybody got a view, all right? In fact, amazing views. But coming up from the bottom to the top, it's really steep, and it's not real wheelchair friendly as a result either. I mean, it is for some wheelchairs, but not others. As you can see, we created 7 buildings. They're numbered. We have 1 apartment building, which is building 7, 3 stories with 13 units. We have 2 fourplexes down here, 1 and 2, and a fourplex for building 6. And the 3, 4, and 5 are side-by-side duplexes. They were priced accordingly, so the duplexes were more expensive because they use more land, and so on. Co-housing is built at cost. There's the model that we used. It's a non-profit development. We were a development company that was a non-profit, basically. We weren't a registered. We started out as a registered society, but that's another story. But we did not make a profit, and that should not lead you to believe that this is below market housing. It is affordable market housing, which is a tough thing to get across. But that's what it is. So there's no profit, but co-housing members generally want more environmentally friendly features. They're willing to pay for that, right? They're willing to pay for a little extra or a lot extra to achieve lower utility costs in the long run, to keep the cost of living down as they age. And so the price of the home at completion is generally what you would pay for a similar home in a similar neighborhood. So if you wonder if you can afford co-housing, look at similar homes in the neighborhood where you're proposing to put your co-housing. The long-term costs are more affordable than living in a conventional condo because of the amount of sharing that takes place. So sharing of cars, sharing of children, sharing of tools, sharing of internet access, and so on. Food, sharing of garden plots. So it does provide an important contribution to the affordable housing continuum in that way. This is a duplex at Harborside, and it's very energy efficient, including passive solar. The little roof out over the deck is such that in the winter the sunlight gets to the back wall of the inside of the building, and in the summer it stops at 11 o'clock in the morning so that it doesn't heat up too much. This is an 801 square foot unit with 2 bedrooms. So it's got 2 bedrooms on the left side of the slide. And as you can see, the view is pretty great. We built to built green gold standard, which Canada built green gold, which is not that hard to reach. It was easy for the apartment building, harder for the duplexes. And our energy costs are very low. It's and the strata fees or condominium fees are $300 a month, which includes garbage and recycling and all of that stuff, and insurance and the maintenance of the common house and things like that. So $300 a month is far more affordable than institutional models, right? And it's an awful lot more fun, I have to say, or it certainly looks like it is. I haven't tested out the institutional models, but it's my impression. So the wow factor was by no means a luxury. I did a talk with the BC Nonprofit Housing Association early in the year in a CMHC-sponsored session, and it was about projects that make you say wow. And this was an unusual project for CMHC to be supporting, but it made them say wow because the location actually reduced the risk so much for the founding members. It was so easy to build the membership at Harborside because people wanted what they could see there, right? So there's often a temptation to pick a site that, and I know that Wolf Willow pretty much did this, to pick a site that's affordable, it's cheaper, because affordable is very subjective, but it's cheaper, and it's in an up-and-coming or slipping neighborhood that you believe you can make better. And that's worthwhile socially, but it's often harder to attract members to those kinds of sites. Whereas, by the time we moved in, and after the CBC had its way with us, very kindly, in a Sunday edition that was rebroadcast, and our waiting list was over 400 when we moved in. Yeah. So to give you a sense of what it looks like, I'll just give you a quick tour. This is the common house. And another angle in the same room. One of the features that, Vicky and Barry have been there. There's a boat turned upside down as a range hood over the range there. A beautifully built boat. Yeah. We have 2 guest rooms in the common house. I'll show you what happened to the third one. There was some extra space during construction, and so instead of having them fill it in with rocks, we had them create an exercise room and an art room at almost no cost to us. We turned the 3rd bedroom in the common house into a library. The care suite is here, which it's a studio apartment. It has a bed up the stairs. There are 2 steps there. So it's not wheelchair accessible. The rest of the common house is. And then we have a bike room, storage lockers, and so on. And Harborside is so much more than the buildings. It's the culture that was created over the 5 years that we worked together before we moved in. And this is a slide of the course that we offered. Andrew is a musician, and he always includes drumming. I'm sorry you didn't get drumming this weekend. Yeah, I have to get Andrew to come. We built a community through having fun together, too, and I think that's so important. That we have a mountaineer in the group, a guy who climbed K2, and he was an outward bound leadership trainer, and so he gave us an outward bound type course in which we had to walk tight ropes and things like that. We did that 3 times. It was really fun. We practiced co-care, which means things like this. I had my left hip replaced a year ago and my right hip replaced in October, and each time we were gifted with, and my husband does cook, but he was looking after me. And so the co-care that we received was meals at our request, and they arrived on beautiful trays with beautiful dishes for lunch and dinner for 6 days after I came home from the hospital. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Yes, the hard hat was part of the fun too. So we believe that by being good neighbors, we can support each other to flourish as we age, and that we can do a better job than institutional independent living could do. We're not saying we don't say we can offer assisted living. I think we probably can by bringing in people to support us, but we certainly can provide a better alternative than independent living for a fraction of the cost. Now, I didn't have a chance to mention in the weekend course, but I do want to draw your attention to the fact that Andrew Moore and I, working with the Community Social Planning Council and with funding from the BC Real Estate Foundation, created 4 how-to guides that are step-by-step how to create co-housing and how to introduce co-housing principles in retrofitting an existing living arrangement. So they're available as a free download from the CanadianSeniorCohousing.com website, which is on the handout that you were given as you came through, or that's available as you came through the door. It's just under resources on that site. So I encourage you to download it and use it. This is a drone's eye view. One of our members got his drone pilot license, but couldn't get agreement from people to fly over the whole project, so he did it from there. Yeah, and this is fulfillment for us, and I believe it's just the beginning. I mean, there's so much interest in BC in creating co-housing. It's only limited by the capacity of the project management. And I see how much interest there is here tonight, and that's the next thing I would like to do. I'm going to end the talk there, and just invite you to take a deep breath, maybe stretch a second, and then I will call upon people in the audience who are representing the groups just to very, very quickly introduce yourself in the name of your group, and then we'll take questions on the talk. How does that sound? Okay, thanks. Because I'd like to invite the members of Convivium Cohousing who are in the room to stand up so we can see who they are and where they are. Very good. Okay. Okay. And there are a couple of people from Terra Firma. Terra Firma? Yes? Anybody else? We have an associate member of Terra Firma too, former members. Yes. How many people in the room have ever had anything to do with Terra Firma? That's what I thought. Yeah. Yeah, that's the fertile ground that you created. Yeah, so thank you for that. Because you led the way with co-housing in Ontario. Yep, appreciate that. Yeah. Ottawa co-housing is also perhaps here.
So I live with Terra Firma for the last 20 years. We've been established, and I'm also involved in another co-housing group, the Ottawa co-housing group.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to be holding an information session on May 10th. And I brought some posters that we'll leave on the table outside the door. And whoever wants to learn more about
Ottawa.
housing groups,
Okay.
welcome to join us on May 10th.
May 10th for Ottawa co-housing. Great. Concord co-housing?
So I don't know, listening to Margaret tonight, I'm not sure that has to be a major difference, but that has been a difference up till now. And we've made a very conscious effort to meet once a month for business and once a month for a social event. So we build our network of relationships very carefully. And we aren't nearly as organized yet in terms of incorporation and bylaws and all those things as Convivium. And we don't know what's happening yet, but we'd be happy to welcome you. And there's contact information on the sheets outside.
Thanks, Caroline. And Perth co-housing, is there anyone here from Perth co-housing? All right, would you like to step up and just say a minute's worth of your news?
There are about 20 of us in Perth who are starting a small co-housing group. We've been together for about 2 years. We've formed a strong community, and we are now consulting with developers and financial people to make it a reality. I brought some of our brochures, and we have a website, and there are a couple of phone numbers on here if you have any questions. And there are 9 of us here, so just accost us at some point. Okay. Thank you.
And is there anyone here from PAL, Ottawa, the artists group? Yes.
Hi, I'm Alison Atkins. I'm one of the founders of PAL Ottawa. PAL is an organization that supports aging in the community of people who've earned their living in the arts. And that probably sounds kind of esoteric and why are they so special? But which is a question we get asked all the time. I am not an artist. The average working artist in this country makes $17,760 a year when they're working. So after that, there's a really strong need. There's Jerry. Jerry, come on here. Jerry, she's a co-founder too. Yes, you are.
I didn't do anything.
Oh, horse
Right.
feathers. Jerry is also the artist whose ceramic mural graces the police station. If you ever happen to be in there. She has art all over town too. PAL is, we have got all of the design work done, all of the business planning done for a building, a co-housing building. It is focused on people who have earned their living in the arts. However, we all know that if you do an affordable housing project, that's not the only people who get to live there. They're just one of the top of the list. There are chapters in Vancouver with 110, 111 units. There's a couple hundred, 205 units in the Esplanade in Toronto, right by the St. Lawrence Market. And there are chapters in Stratford, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Halifax, and Calgary. So there's a lot of momentum, however, breaking through the barrier of the first chuckle of artists, question mark. So, but it is very much a co-housing design that we did with lots of shared spaces throughout the building, lots of opportunity for public events and public spaces as well. So it's to be continued, and I encourage you to go out and come prepared like all the rest of these people with nice brochures and things. However, you can look at palottawa.org and have a look. Come and play. Thanks.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Is there anyone here from Cohabitat Wakefield? Would one of you like to speak?
Hello, I'm Arlene Prost, and I'm one of the 8. I'm one of the 8 founding members of Cohabitat Wakefield, and we've been meeting for about a year. And as our name suggests, we want to live in Wakefield. We're a small group of 8, and a very efficient group. And I think one of the most wonderful things about us is after our meetings, we say we loved it. We walk away, we're not frustrated usually, we love our meetings. And I guess, and we're working closely with funding sources in Quebec who very much support co-ops. And we now have our legal status as a co-op, and we're working in a program with phases, and hoping that eventually our land will be bought by one of the organizations we're working with. So it's very interesting, and we're very excited. And good luck to all of you, so that we can say to our children, no, we're fine.
Yeah.
So good luck, everybody, on your projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the Ottawa Senior Pride Network? Yay.
So I'm from the Ottawa Senior Pride Network. We are not quite at the stage that some of you are at yet, but we serve the gay, lesbian, bisexual community, and you wonder again, why are they different? Well, there's a lot of reasons why the LGBT community is different. And there's a huge, big fear among many of our members of going into a regular seniors residence. Not only from the aspect of what other residents are going to treat, how they're going to be treated that way, how the staff is going to treat people, and we do have a part of our organization that goes out to seniors residences and does training, Gay 101 and now Gay 201. We already trained some people and they're on to the second level of training. But that being said, we are now looking at what are our options of living either as co-housing, and I think that's probably one of the best options. So that's where we are, is starting the process of looking at co-housing for our community.
Thank you. Okay, then it's question time.
I have a question for you. My name is Jack. I was wondering if you could sort of summarize or give us a bit of information about the 2 days. What was some of your major intention in trying to bring people together and speak to them about co-housing?
Okay, so that's the 2 days that we just did here in Ottawa?
Yes.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I'll just let you know again that if anyone would like to submit a question in writing, Dal here is happy to present it in either official language. And he's also happy to translate if we want to do that. So what was the objective in doing the course? I did it at the invitation of the convivium group, who approached me last fall, I think it was, to ask if I could do a course on aging well in community. And they also wanted parts of the other course that I offered. We basically had a conversation about what would serve their purposes. And the way it ended up was a combination of getting your head out of the sand, which is the most important part. I have a slide on day one from Australia of all these people with their heads in the sand, their bums up in the air. They're clothed, mercifully. But it is such a challenge to get out of denial that we are getting older. I mean, I know everybody else is, and I see my friends and go, oh my goodness, you're looking older. But are we getting older? Not really, right? So it's a wake-up call, and realizing that if you're proactive now, you have a better chance of having the quality of life in the next 20 or 30 years that you'd like to have. So the course, as I taught it I guess we taught it 13 times, Andrew and I, over 5 years. As we taught it, that course was all about getting involved in co-housing if that was what you wanted. Now, not, like at 55, not at waiting until you were ready. And lots of people didn't go forward with it because they weren't ready. So that was the gist of what I was bringing to the group this weekend. And then they took it in directions that served them. So it became very much, I hadn't expected it to be quite so tailor-made, but it was how it evolved. And I'm happy to facilitate that way. So we did work on consensus-based decision-making, some work around facilitation, some work on communications, just a taster on communication models, and some work with something called the pattern language cards, adapted from an architectural book called Pattern Language, but it's for group work. So we did a lot of different kinds of things. They'll all tell you about it. It was too much sitting, but that was their choice too.
Margaret, my question, actually I have about 10 of them, but I'll just ask
Try
one because I know that, yeah. Is Harborside a senior co-housing project, or is it intergenerational? I got confused when you spoke,
Yes.
because it sounded as though you included everybody.
We do.
But does the living include everybody?
Yes.
So it is an intergenerational.
It is senior focused. That is, everybody is subsidizing a care suite in the common house. Everybody is committing to support each other as we age voluntarily, and it has no age restriction. So we don't have any young children living there full time. They come and go, they visit, but they could. So if I wanted to steal my granddaughters away from Ottawa, which is very tempting right now, I could raise them at Harborside, and they would be
So if a
welcomed.
young family wanted to move in, they would be
could
welcome.
do that. That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. Now, we didn't attract young families, and that is often the case. So I'm working with a group outside of Victoria on the Saanich Peninsula now that is really looking for young families, but it's not that easy to find young families that are ready to make that kind of a move or can afford it. Yeah. Thanks. You can come back for your later questions.
Sure. I too have probably about 200 questions, but I've restricted it to two. First of all, I'd just like to thank Convivium for inviting us here tonight and
Yeah.
making it available to come. That's really good of you. It's a great demonstration of the values of co-housing, I feel,
Yeah.
so thanks again. I have two questions. I'll restrict it to actually not only our speaker, but if anyone else with the same experience, if we have time, could chime in, that would be great. You did mention when you, at your talk, everything sort of came together when you had 8, I'm not sure if it was family or people, and enough cash on the barrelhead. Could you be more specific on how much generally cash per 8 person sort of came together
Sure.
that allowed you then to go to the next step?
Sure. Thanks. That helps me to clarify what I was saying. So for us, with a $2 million land purchase cost and a friendly landowner who was willing to carry the loan, we didn't have to pay for the whole piece of property.
Thank you.
Immediately. In fact, we didn't have to pay for it until we got our construction loan in full. So for us, the commitment was, it was 8 households, and the payment was per household, and we committed to $20,000 initially. We didn't need $20,000 when we made that commitment. The project didn't need that much money, and the goal always was not to have more money in the project than we needed. In other words, to cover expenses, not to have a big bank account. So that day in January, we actually wrote checks for $7,000. And then as new members joined, I don't think we actually had to pay the full $20,000 until 6 months later.
Okay.
But had new members not joined, we would have had to pay it. If we were buying land from competing with developers for a site, we would have had to put up a lot more money than that. So groups in Vancouver, where the land prices are bananas, are having to, Driftwood Village Cohousing, which just purchased land, got 16 members together and committed $50,000 apiece. And they spent a year just building community and agreeing on where they wanted to look and what kind of site they wanted.
Right.
And then they were able to secure it and then get a mortgage for the balance, right?
Well, that's great. Thank you for the details. It gives me a better sort of window. My second question, and again, this is open to others. I'm wondering if you could demonstrate a few more examples of how you're living sustainably in terms of, brown water use, recycling, compost. Did you have greenhouses? If you could just give some examples of maybe
Yeah.
how that's done or how it's foreseen to be done in the future by your
Right.
group.
Okay, so for Harborside, I can answer. We are solar, photovoltaic solar ready, and we didn't put those in initially, but we are now putting them on our common house to reduce we're an all electric community, which makes possibly more sense in BC than it does here. But our hydroelectric rates are good. It's all hydroelectricity in BC, so it's renewable. We do have a rainwater catchment system for garden watering, and so we basically in Victoria there are 2 seasons. There's the wet season and the dry season, and in the dry summer we use the rainwater that we catch in the winter, so that works for our climate. We're not dealing with grey water. We're on a municipal sewage system, and that's what we're doing. We went with things that were not highly visible, but were effective. So it's in the quality of the insulation and the sourcing of the lumber and that sort of thing. Under construction, it was really impressive. Now it just looks like an ordinary complex, right? What else have we done? We're trying to organize a car share, but the town's only 10,000 people, and it's hard to get that going with that small number of people. Our compost, yes. So Vicki and Barry have had the pleasure of probably giving the Joracan a spin. We have 2 Joracan composters on the property that handle all of our kitchen waste and produce really great compost really quickly. And we have a clockmaker who repairs the Peace Clock, who built screens for them that are beautiful Japanese-looking tea house enclosures. We have 4 blue or green cone digesters for pet waste and meat and bones. So we're net zero on zero waste on the bio-waste. We don't have a program, well, we do have a program we could pay for to take the bio-waste away, but we chose to just deal with it.
Just deal with it yourself.
Yeah. So and we have a really great recycling program, and we've educated people who never recycled in their lives. So it can be argued that co-housing is extremely environmental because it changes people's behavior. And that, I'm told, is the hardest thing about getting people to be conservation-minded. So we've learned to, slice up our avocado peels and recycle everything, all the stuff that some people were throwing into the trash. Yeah. Right, and tool sharing, we do that too. And we went from 31 lawnmowers to one lawnmower, And does anybody have a car seat? And does anybody have a slow cooker? It happens every day in community. Yeah. And our hot water is centrally heated, so we all share the hot water. And our water bill is also centrally paid. Yep. Okay.
Hi. Thank you again for today. Coming from housing co-op and food co-op, so where it was not shared equity, it was just fixed costs. I'm curious about the budget for maintenance and the operation of it. Do you hire that out? Does your group run the do you still, now that you've let go of the project, because you had project managers working with you and the architect, do you have a board that's made up of each shareholder, and do people put in sweat equity, or is it, I'm just curious as to how it runs.
Yeah, we were curious too.
I had one other question. I have one other question that's related, and that's for future residents. Do you have an interview process?
Right.
In other words, keeping the quality of those who will continue to make up and sustain your community.
Right. Okay, so first the maintenance, then the membership. The transition to, we're self-managed. We do have a property management company that collects the strata fees, so everybody is set up electronically to put that in, and they write the checks. But that's all they do. And so it is self-managed. We knew this was coming. We thought we were self-managing already, but the first year was really quite a steep learning curve. It's a complex property, right? It's with 3 building types and 7 buildings, and very complicated sprinkler systems that have to be balanced, and the water catchment system has to be blown out in the fall, and all of this stuff. It's like a private property gone on steroids, right? So it's very demanding, and we've turned the corner on it. We're really now doing a good job. It's all volunteer. There's no participation requirement. I did study, as an anthropologist, I studied housing co-ops in Toronto particularly, but a little bit in Ottawa. And I know that participation requirements are a big topic in co-ops. And we thought of having a participation requirement. We had a discussion about it. And there were members who thought it was a great idea because some people were doing much more than others. I think this is just the way humans operate. I'm sure, in the little village that I lived in Vanuatu, they had the same complaint. Why am I doing everything and they're doing nothing, right? And why are there pets all over, they were pigs, right? But why are they all over my place? And those people's kids, they're totally out of control. It was the same issues that I saw in the housing co-ops and the same issues that you see in co-housing. The reason we didn't have a participation requirement is that nobody wanted to be the enforcer, right? We'd rather be doing the work than doing the enforcing. So we tried to incentivize it. We used chocolate blatantly.
Great idea.
We use wine almost as blatantly. And people who, they had a cleanup on Earth Day last weekend, and the people who weren't going to participate in the actual cleanup and the physical work were making soup. So there are many ways to contribute, and we value all of them, and we didn't want to get into a point system or that sort of thing. So everybody is on our condo board, if you like.
Yeah.
It's our strata council, but everybody is on it. including we have some tenants. They're on it too. And they have been drawn to Harborside because it's co-housing. We've had 3 resales since we moved in a year and a quarter ago, and all of them have come from our interested list, which is what the 400 people waiting list became. So people are drawn to the lifestyle, and they socialize very quickly, and we work really hard to make sure that they do, to really welcome them and support them. We give everybody a buddy. We did this through the development process, and we do it now as well. And we have absolutely no control over who joins us now that we are a condominium, right?
Wow.
None at all. We've attempted to encourage people, we have encouraged people to sell using the support of the community to attract the buyer, but 2 of those 3 sales were through realtors. And so we socialized the realtors, right? It's all an opportunity. And one of the things that we're committed to is to going with the flow and not resisting change. Because I believe that as we get older, we tend to get a little bit more dug in and set in our ways and kind of calcified. And when we heard that these sales were going to be handled by a realtor, my heart sank. I thought, oh no. And then I just took a deep breath, talked to some friends, and we said, okay, we can do this. You know, we won't get the commission, which is unfortunate, and the homes could have sold for so much less because we did the selling, basically. We always said, we are not licensed realtors, blah, 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 disclaimer, disclaimer. And then we'd spend 3 hours talking to people. So legally, we have no control. Culturally, we have all of the control. And it's our belief, based on the experience of other co-housing communities, that when Mr. and Mrs. Awful show up, because they will, that they won't stay long because they won't like it, right? And they won't get their way. And they'll either settle down and become good members, or they'll move on.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, thanks.
Hi, Margaret. Could you elaborate on your group decision-making process? What model did you come up with when you started with 8 people? And what model do you have now with 31 people? And which decisions were hardest to get agreement on during the design construction phase? And which decisions were hardest to get agreement on now that you've been operating for a year and a half? We know that drone pictures of your community caused some tension, but what else did?
It was fairly minor, actually, the drone. We just had to agree on the boundaries. The model that we used was the model that we were introduced to by Cohousing Development Consulting, our professional project management team. We began using it immediately. We had actually been using a variant of it. We'd been using colored cards. We had a red card for, you can guess, no, a green card for yes, and a yellow card for I got some questions and concerns. As I say, we began using that before we contracted with Cohousing Development Consulting, and began using it in all of our meetings. We made every decision by consensus, but we made them knowing, not every decision, we made almost every decision by consensus, knowing that we had a voting backup of a 3/4 supermajority vote. That, I think, is very important for effective consensus decision making, because nobody can hold up the process. So we got, and the hardest decision that we made in the development phase, man, we call it a backup decision thing. We have consensus with a backup voting process, right? And it's a super majority, which is a 3/4 majority. Majorities can be 51%, as we know, or 49% in some cases. But I digress. And they can be, or they can be a 2/3 majority. This is a 3/4 majority. So it means not very many people can be unhappy, right? And we work very hard not to have to do a vote. We voted a few things that we couldn't have agreed on by consensus, and they were usually either very time sensitive and urgent, and otherwise they were superficial and aesthetic. like paint colors, right? Well, you might not say that's superficial, but anyway. So during the development phase, one of the things that we did was to buy land. That was very difficult. We had an opportunity to buy property, the adjacent property, so you can see it. We bought all of this, and members agreed within 48 hours, 100%. We said we were still directors and shareholders of the development company at the time, and we said, when you became a director of the company, you thought you were just becoming a shareholder in Harborside, and now we're proposing to purchase more land. We need 100% agreement if we're going to do it. And we did it, and people were far-flung. It was the only decision we've ever made by email, and we got 100% within 48 hours. And the agreement was that we would sell half of it off to the neighbors. It all had trees on it at that time. And we sold half to the neighbors, and the neighbors cut the trees down on this part, which made us sad, but it was done. Too many people thought it was unaffordable if we kept the whole thing. And that has continued to be a discussion to this day as we work to find, and we're working so well to find a consensus path through this that is not divisive. And it's taking a long time. And that's okay, because there's really not a rush. I think we learn what we need to do in a hurry and what we don't, and to use the time that we meet effectively and then let it sit there for another month and then do it again. When we're in a rush is when we sometimes have to vote, and we try not to be in a rush. And then there was an example too during the development when we decided to refinish the floor in the common house. So there's a slide earlier on where you can see it's a beautiful, exotic, like Australian hardwood floor or something. The owner had enough hardwood to fill in the place where we took out some stairs, and then the question was, do we refinish the one spot or the whole thing? I cite this as an example of how trivial topics can be, and I didn't want to mention the clothesline again because I belabored that one in the course over the weekend, but that was another one. It's so trivial, and yet it was so divisive, and a lot of it was about the way the discussion was handled in the business meeting. But that was the only time a red card was ever used, and it was some woman just at her wit's end who just said, I give up, I block the whole thing, right? And we then removed so you asked about what's the difference after we were completed in our decision making. We removed the red card. So when I worked with the convivium group this weekend, we had a new card in there that I didn't already mention to you, which is a blue card, which we'd always had in our deck actually, but it's a process card. It's in discussion, it's you're off topic, or you're going on too long. And the whole group uses them, and Convivium learned to really use those cards well in a short period of time. We removed the red card and we started using the blue card. If you wished you could block this decision and you wanted to call on the group to support you to find a better decision. It's hardly been used, just like the red card. But what gets used all the time are the yellow cards, which are the kind of caution cards. That say, I have some reservations about this, and this is what it is. And then that's given out into the conversation before you actually finish the vote, or before you call for the rest of the cards. So, we continue to have difficult decisions. We probably have a difficult decision every month. But what we have is a connection with each other and an agreement about the process that allows us to work through it. And we don't rush, but when we get a decision, it sticks. Is that enough for now?
Sure. Thanks. Thank you. My name's David, and thank you for the information. I had a chance to read the Senior Co-Housing Handbook by Charles Drett, which was a great read, and he covers a lot of different communities.
Yeah.
And they all seem to come to different kinds of agreements about how often they eat together.
Yes.
And I wonder where you came to, but more importantly, how you came to that. And does everybody join in on that? Or do some people just opt out and not join into the common meals? Or do you even have them?
Okay, thanks. Common meals are so important to co-housing. They kind of are in the same breath, right? And we have always had a monthly potluck after our business meeting. We continue to do this, and we finally said to ourselves, why are we doing this? We have all these other common meals now, and we still have a potluck after our business meeting. So we may not have a potluck after our business meeting soon. We don't know. The first year, we didn't have nearly as many common meals as we had hoped that we would, because we were so busy figuring out the maintenance and the all of the other technical stuff, the bookkeeping and all of that stuff. The legal finance committee was run off its feet. The community building was busy and so on. But now, like around the fall, I guess, we started having a regular Sunday brunch. You pay $7. You can sign up to help, and always enough people seem to sign up to help to make it work. You can just come. You don't have to let people know in advance. So there's a whole lot of breakfast food that sort of goes from week to week. But, it's omelets one week and pancakes the next and that sort of thing. We usually do a simple supper before movie night on Thursdays. But it can be so simple, like getting pizza, right? Or a lasagna from the grocery store. The idea was to find ways to eat together that didn't make a lot of work for people. And we have a speakers series every 2 weeks, no, once a month. And we always have a potluck before that. Whenever there's a work party, we have lunch. So food is working its way in to the ordinary round of things. But we are not star pupils in this regard. There are co-housing communities that have dinner every weeknight, So it's good to see. The book gives you lots and lots of better examples than Harborside. But it works for us. And we don't require people to come, and we don't even always ask that they let us know. They just can show up.
I'd just like you to clarify something, please, because I think you said a little while ago, now that we're a condominium, or we are a condominium, are you illegal? Is your legal status condominium?
That's right.
And you have a a property management company that collects the fees, or what you call strata fees.
That's right.
But you, you have your own board of people who do other things like the bookkeeping.
That's right. So we don't have a board. We don't have an elected or appointed board. We are a condominium. At the point at which construction was completed, we still have the development company, but that's because of a homeowner warranty that we have to keep for 5 years. So it's still running parallel, but the main thing in play is the condominium. We became condominium titled at move-in when we took possession of the property. But the difference between a co-housing condominium, as we understand it, and a conventional condominium is we don't have an elected board. We do have a board, but it's honorific. We have a president, a treasurer, and a secretary, and a vice president, I think, but they don't do anything. And they're not particularly important. They're not the weighty members of the community. It is honorific. And the decisions are all made by the membership, and they are all on council. So it is astonishing to our property management company that we do it this way, and she comes to our annual general meetings. We now had 2. The first one was 15 minutes. The second one was a half an hour. Everything was amicable. Everything was unanimous by a show of cards. And we simply adapted the condominium, working under the Strata Property Act of BC, which is the Condominium Act of BC. We adapted the bylaws to suit our purposes and do it all within the letter of the law. So voting shall be by colored cards. So it uses that structure. And why do we do that? Because at least in our experience, using this model through Cohousing Development Consulting in BC, we looked at becoming a co-op, and we were unable to get an assurance that we would get mortgages for our members. And we were unable to get an assurance that we would be able to get a construction loan for the whole project. So as much as our members are oriented toward, and often and many of them come from the co-op movement, it wasn't going to work for us, at least not in the short run, without a lot of awareness raising. So that's what we did. I think it could be different in Quebec, certainly, and in the Ottawa area, but that's what we did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm guessing that pets are not an issue because of your legal condominiums way of living. Do you have any things to tell us about pets?
Where do I start?
I thought it might be one of those things.
Yeah, pets are a huge issue. It's the first thing that the co-housing communities I'm working with now are coming up with a community agreement for, because it's a deal breaker for a lot of people. If I can't bring my dog, cat, whatever, I'm not moving, right? And so they all come to an agreement early on, about, in principle at least, about what their pet policy is. And then there's always something that happens. In our case, it was, we had no size, we still have no size restriction on dogs. We allowed 2 dogs or 2 cats or 1 of each, and any breed, any size. And a Great Pyrenees attacked a Jack Russell. Oh, God. And it wasn't even our Jack Russell, it was our neighbor's Jack Russell. The crab fishermen over there, with an empty dock right there, they're all out getting crabs, and they donate them to us, along with selling them to the Vancouver market. So they're really wonderful, valuable neighbors, and their dog got attacked by the Great Pyrenees. And it was a major meltdown. During the development phase, we were about 6 months from move-in. Along with purchasing land, it was the floor, it was the other big one. And people were so upset that they nearly cut off their relationships with people. And one of the things we're committed to is that we don't have people we don't talk to. Does that make sense in the double negative? Yeah. Okay. You cannot avoid your neighbor. And I think it's something that encourages excellent communication skills in co-housing, is that you commit to stay in relationship with each other. We don't find it charming when people decide they're going to be out of there, that nobody walks out of a meeting, right? It's belittled as childish if someone does. And they get no attention. So if you're going to stay in relationship in these kinds of tense discussions, it's really hard. And you can't, like now, in conventional housing, if you're mad at your neighbor, you just don't talk to them. Or you're mad at your friend at work, you avoid them, right? It's harder. It's ridiculous, and it's hard. And, I had a colleague at York that tried that one on me once, and it's awful. But we don't have that. And so you can't isolate in co-housing, so you have to find a way of communicating. And we've worked through the pet thing, and the Great Pyrenees is now not on the property. He's staying with friends. Yeah, he was a guard dog, and that was just not working. Yeah.
Hi, John again. So in terms of dealing with outside bodies, it sounds like as you went through your process, and please correct me where I'm wrong, it sounds like you were originally the core group of 8 that eventually expanded. Mm-hmm. You were originally a nonprofit development company, and then that transitioned to what you currently are, which is now a condominium corporation.
Right. And
also nonprofit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And to fine-tune that, the development company was simply a numbered BC company. It was 095126 BC Limited. So its intention was to be not to make a profit, but they did report GST quarterly and pay it, filed a corporate tax return. So they were just a company. But the whole idea was not to make a profit, so that at the completion of construction, the exact cost of the whole project was the sum total of the cost of the 31 units to the owners. Right? Does that make sense? Okay.
The units plus the land.
Yes, the units plus the soft costs plus the construction. I mean, yeah, the units, which would be the construction, plus the architect's fees, the project manager fee, the engineers and so on, plus the land. That's right. Yeah.
My question is to you or to any of the other groups. When you begin, when you just have those 8 couples or what have you, where do you get the money to hire people like you or other professionals to kind of support a group?
You dig deep into your pockets.
So it's the personal group then that
It's the personal group, and it's very contentious in my experience. I've seen it with our own group, where I was, by the time we were 8, I was the only survivor. Andrew had gone separately. They decided to stay where they were, and his partner as well. So each group ends up with somebody or a few people who are sort of the burning soul, who carry that early momentum, and there usually is pushback around, couldn't we do this ourselves? It's so expensive, you know, and professional advice is expensive. It just is. And people need, it's like, you know, artists making $17,000 a year. Believe it, the CDC, the Co-Housing Development Consulting, is not getting rich off of this. And it costs a lot of money. So the group we were doing a community building workshop. That was the first workshop that was offered to us. And it was really looking in detail at just these kinds of questions. How much money, when, where does it go? Can I get it back? The answer is no. And those sorts of things. And people said, oh no, it's too soon. We'd be rushing it to go and hire her, or this was Renee Matthew in that day, or me. You know, I can't tell you how many groups have thought they would like to have me come and give the course. And then when they hear that it's, you know, however much money it is to come and travel, then they go, oh no, we're not ready for that. Or just a speaking engagement, they're not ready for it. But that's what it takes, is to take a leap of faith. It's the closest thing to a religious experience is not religious, right? Yeah.
Margaret.
You ready? Okay. So I want to give, you want to wrap up and have a chance to talk about convivium too?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lynn Markle, and I'm involved in Convivium. We are organized as a nonprofit, and we do have a board, but we're learning more about consensus decision making. So we're making some transitions. We had a wonderful weekend with Margaret, and she helped us a lot. So really, on behalf of all Convivium people, all the co-housing groups that are here tonight, and others who are interested in seniors co-housing, I wanted to thank you for your wonderful talk. You've got great stories, and I think we all learn from specifics. It's one thing to talk about the concept of co-housing, but it's another thing to hear somebody's stories. And we're going to go away, and we're going to say, oh my God, remember what happened in Harborside? And Margaret told us about that tonight.
Right.
Here's our issue of the floors, you know?
Yeah.
And so we know that we're doing something relatively new here in Ottawa, and that what I'm so excited to see tonight is the range of groups that were here. And
Yes.
and please go, we can give you a little more information about Convivium, but we also want you to go and talk to other people that are here as well. So we brought Margaret here. We also, if you haven't had a chance and you liked the presentation and you didn't make a donation, please help do that so we can cover our costs. But above all, I want to thank Margaret for sharing, for coming here all the way from Souk, BC, which I know, and for just exciting us, I think, about the possibilities. Do you agree that it was a really good talk?
Oh, thank you. Thank you all.